way of putting that would be, it is circular. Just conduct, justice, just reasons for going to war, bills to just conduct of war, bills to justice after war, and breaking any of those down means that you have not engaged in a just war. Okay? Now, I'll shut up and let you read it. I might give you about 3 or 4 minutes.
But no one's on. But if they do join, they'll just be able to see it. We just I think if we just start the computer.
Heath, do you need to tell us something?
Well, just, I don't think anyone's on, but the reason you're not seeing it, if we don't, I think we have to shut the computer off each week as opposed to just closing it because it seems it doesn't resync with the computer. If the computer's not cycled. So if anyone happens to join, they can see, they can hear it, they'll just be on the small computer versus the big screen.
All right. Has everybody read through the sheet?
Yes.
Okay. If you have, do you have any burning concerns, questions that might have, is this not clear? Doesn't mean that you'll do it. Is it not clear what the just war tradition, as understood in the Christian church, and that's what we're talking about, is when it comes to just reason or conditions to going to war. Okay. Emily is my check to make sure that I am as clear as I think I am. And one of the things she asked me to stress today is that we're not simply talking about nations at war. We're also talking about the way we conduct our smaller wars. We're talking about how we fight, I'll use that word, with our neighbor, our husband, our wife, our fellow church member, our co-worker, our boss. These understandings, these disciplines, which need to be emblazoned in our brains as Christians, so that they are automatically come to the fore, like the Lord's Prayer does. Can help us in dealing with our everyday faithfulness to God and the stresses of life. Now, did I make that clear, Emily? Yeah. and it's really important that you all call me when I'm not clear. And when something sounds really weird, I will tell you the first time I read this book on just war as Christian discipleship and heard the author speak the first 2 or 3 times, it drove me nuts. I couldn't make it parse with my understanding of the Christian faith. And what really hung me up was, how can you love while killing somebody? He works on that really hard, and so did a whole bunch of thinkers before him. And so don't feel like you have to agree or think you'll agree with any of this. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, as you did last week, to turn to whoever is next to you, either side, however it works. I'm not going to count off or anything like that. And I'll give you 5 minutes to do something that's going to be really important. Let's say that the conditions, the reasons that are on that front, that page that you just have been met. You are now at war. Or you're fighting with your mom. Or your daughter. What conditions, what rules do you need to follow? Try to come up with at least 2 or 3, couple of 3. What rules do you need to follow while you are at war? And you apply that both to nations and to you. Got it? Do it, please.
Actually, my house, should we do 2 different things? My family, both sides of my family, grew up with this model of very passive aggressive arguing until it like explodes. It's almost like leaving a pressure cooker on too long. Like you hear them hissing in the background and you have to yeah. But that really isn't fun. And I don't mean that, but like I'm just trying to take steps on how to get past that and like going to therapy for it and stuff like that because I've learned that that doesn't happen in the real world. You just burn a lot of bridges and you don't know why. But I always try to have like
That's making sure that you're welcome.
like when you do X, Y, Z,
Whatever you're saying.
and also
That's what I was
trying to
You have to like a difference if
having
it's a
friends in my family trying to because people are really up stuff from the deep dark corners of your basement and throw it up.
Whatever you're saying or doing.
And realizing that you have to live with each other when it's over.
Stay on the topic of, you have to stay on the topic and then say that. Okay. Stay
I mean, if it's a war of a person, there aren't any personal attacks. It's the issue.
I think a thing that was really hard for me was like
I don't know how that
realizing
applies.
that everyone is blaming us. Because I'm the kind of person I hate having to blame like somebody.
It's like it's become a Russian start personal attacks. Freeze their money, freeze their peace.
And I know that, so
we're trying to stay on what we can do. How about thinking persons?
yeah. And
How do you say
realizing
that?
that, you know, I'm not entirely blameless in this situation.
If it's a really
stick to
situation, you don't kill the
I
person.
know,
Stick to the truth
Okay, I like that.
If it's a country,
You
those
don't let the person see
You don't bring up.
well, that puts this point, once you have a concession, whether it's
what's
personal
really
or
good is the word is really ugly is just taking
you don't
10
destroy
minutes
the
apart.
person.
Just realizing, you know, you're probably going to say something you're going to regret, so to avoid that, just take like 5-10 minutes.
Got lots of rooms. We're gonna have a war.
And that's the time to be petty and by yourself, and you go have a child or tantrum, and then come back and be a reasonable adult.
Execute.
Yeah.
If you don't execute the person, you don't destroy. If concessions don't, you're okay, that's good. Treat remain. Right.
For those of you who came in after I reminded everybody, you should have in front of you this piece on just war, which is the reason and conditions for going to war as we discussed last week. All of you have looked at that. Today, we're going to start with how you conduct hostilities. What happens when these have been met? And you have just been coming up with some things that are important. As you are in a violent or sometimes not violent altercation. We start with nations, but we apply this to one another. else takes yours, don't pout, use your other one, or just move ahead. I want you to participate and we'll try to get these down, and then I'll try to summarize and add to what was and as we end. Okay, let's start with the far group, and I'm doing this for
That's her.
Ella is the only person I
Eddie has it all. Eddie has it all.
She's got it.
Yeah, just a minute. Is the only person I think in this room whose immediate family has lived through war on their home territory. You have. Your family.
My dad.
Okay, you're dead. Good. You got two. Ella's family lived through a war. Her immediate family lived through a war that is seen by many people in the world, I would say most people in the world, as a just war against her nation. She did not live through that. Well, yes, you did. You lived through that war. And a war before her grandparents lived through a war against her nation that most historians say, because of the real problematic peace, was not a just war against her nation. So she has a unique perspective. So I'm going to start with this group. Give me one.
Well, Brady's first response was, keep your weapons dry. Keep your powder dry. Keep your powder dry. And to me, that meant whatever you're using, either in a country war or against a person to person, whatever you're saying or doing is effective. It's not just collateral damage or whatever.
It's what? I'm sorry.
It's effective. Whatever you're saying or doing is effective in helping you to reach your goal and purpose.
Okay. So,
Can I say something?
yes.
Quick about that? Our way of framing that was stay on task. That covers a lot of, all the way down, even a small argument.
I didn't get that.
Stay on task.
Stay on task. Okay.
Keep your powder dry.
And that goes back to this. Why did you go to war? Why was it just to go to war? And are you sticking with that? Or are you throwing other stuff in as you go? So another way of looking at that same point is called proportionality. Are the means you're using proportional in line with for purpose. For example, if you are warring to restore a just or create a just peace, which you should be, are the methods you're using going to contribute to that just peace? Okay, so these go together. Let's get another one. Over here somewhere.
Well, we were thinking more of individual things, but one of our main things is listen. Listen is the word.
Say somebody up here say that to me.
Listen.
Listen.
I'm sure there's a more effective way to say that.
Stop talking.
Okay, that's.
Don't just let somebody else talk. Hear what they're saying, even though you don't want to. Listen.
Yeah, good.
And have a happy marriage. And have a happy marriage.
What are some others that relate also to nations?
The way we framed it, because whether it's nations or down to personal level, if there's a concession, you don't destroy at that point. You treat the situation humanely. In other words, like if you have prisoners in the war, it's more efficient for you as to actually just eliminate the prisoners because it's, it saves some of your resources and stuff like that. But that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to treat any prisoners. You don't get civilians, for instance.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Wasn't Dresden in Germany? I'm going to speak loudly as I can.
Yes.
The last major city that got totally leveled by the Allies, and it was later looked on by some as a war crime because the war was essentially over.
Yes.
And wasn't Elie Wiesel at 13 in Auschwitz saying, why doesn't Roosevelt bomb this camp? He better have everyone in the camp dead and the camp gone, which is beyond, I don't know.
You make a very good point. The same point was made in Hiroshima. Do you need to use what is necessary to reach your goal, the original goal? If you turn it into a revenge motive, they have done bad, so we're going to do just as bad. You no longer have a just war.
Can I say something?
And Chip makes a really important point. Now, the matter of non-combatants is really, it's not just prisoners, it's civilians. It is troops that have surrendered.
Ordinary citizens?
Ordinary citizens.
Just happen to live there.
You don't try to kill these people. In order to force the other nation to surrender, or a city to surrender. You don't level a city and kill all its population in order to try to force a city to surrender. You also must not torture. And we could argue all day about what the meaning of torture is, and it would not be helpful. But we're not going to do that today. You don't torture prisoners. And it's not simply because most military minds say you can't trust what they give you anyway. That's not the reason. It's nations, excuse me.
Should you conduct this battle with appropriate speed to make it not drag out?
You want to make it as you want to use the means that are necessary, and only the means that are necessary, and the means that achieve your goal with the least negative effect on the civilian populations and so forth.
Like
So,
Afghanistan, should we, like Afghanistan, where we stayed and stayed and stayed and then left.
Yes, and we would have been better off. That also goes right back to the reasonable probability of success, which is another point here. You started with that before you went to war, but all the way through the war, a reasonable probability of you got it, of success has to be reassessed as you go.
John, say it. John keeps wanting, can I
Go,
say something?
John.
Say it.
Well, I got two things to say. One is you need a better marker.
Yes.
So just close that one and get another one from this tray.
Well, okay, I think I just need to turn it.
But one of the odd things about this whole discussion, and that's why it kind of flips a little bit, is first where you have you have to have a just reason for going to war and waging the war. But once you've started the war, your goal has changed. Now you have to go for a just peace immediately when you're doing the war. So all of a sudden, that changes what's going on.
Yes. And actually, that's the third stage, but it enters into the second stage.
Yeah, so that's what, that's why you want to end it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Can I bring one other issue up, and then I can be quiet for a while, is you don't bring in other people or other issues into the battle. In other words, if you're vulnerable and you go into this battle and it's just you're defending yourself, if I'm arguing with Carla, I don't bring the kids, our children into the mix, stuff like that. And that's part of staying on task. But the idea is, in the same thing, when you don't try to bring the whole world into the war, you should.
And you've got to consider at all times the effect on other nations, other peoples, and so forth.
Like there's no wheat to feed Africa right
Be a
now.
part of the war because it affects their well-being. But you don't you don't bring in the non-combatants, and especially you don't use false propaganda and so forth to induce people to come in. So, but this,
Wiley,
yes,
but I think also on the other side of that coin, it can be effective to have an unbiased third-party mediator, especially to avoid going to war. If you have someone who can kind of see both perspectives and properly relay that message to each other, maybe there's just a miscommunication either due to like culture or region or language.
Like the UN at the highest level.
Yeah.
Should be.
okay. Now, this reasonable probability of success really affects Emeritus in thinking of this Afghanistan, as you pointed out, Joanne, and several other wars that we have been a part of. We keep pushing, nations keep pushing when they know they have lost. Just war tradition, theory, understanding is, you know what? When you lost, stop. Work out the most just peace you can and stop. There is no honor in fighting when it is lost.
And we're not talking about the physical war, we're talking about the reason for going to war.
It's both.
Because, you know, especially in our case, all the money we constantly spend on military, we can make things go on forever and ever and ever and ever on the physical side. But if you lost the battle to begin with, for why you went in there,
Yes.
then you have to quit.
I want to read you.
Joanne wanted to say something.
That's like religion, you know?
Yeah, whether religion or culture, whatever.
And what we think we should do is wear down over time and spend more money but it doesn't work.
Did we use more violence than necessary or other immoral means to accomplish our objective? Did we fail to take into to avoid in every way doable killing innocents? Vatican II upgraded this. Vatican II, of course, back a number of years ago, but it was very important. Vatican II, the Roman Catholic Church, said every act of war aimed indiscriminately at the destruction of entire cities or extensive areas along with their populations is a crime against God and man himself. It merits unequivocal and unhesitating condemnation, and I would add resistance. So the just war tradition continues to develop, and it's different when you say, how does this apply to Christians? as opposed to simply, what's the checklist? Yes.
Which I know this is sort of vague, but also really specific in one. How do you decide who's innocent in a war where the other side has had a draft? And in the sense of like forced military entry, it's not like they signed up for this war. They didn't sign. They were forced out of their homes. They were forced to fight or be killed. And in the sense of self-preservation, they go into this war.
Self-preservation? You're too young to remember Vietnam. When
I barely
My-
remember Y2K.
my cohorts had a whole plan to get to Canada. We were in college in Maine, so it was easy. Because we knew we were smarter than McNamara, who later cried over the war and what he'd done. We were smarter than them. Kennedy was ready to end it before he was murdered.
A major thing, and I think it was our pastor who brought this up. She was talking to a man who had been shattered by his experiences. I believe it was in Iraq, but you can't be sure of that. It doesn't really matter. Where he was forced, he had to make a decision. There were hostile forces who were picking off I'll just make it, this isn't exactly the case, but this will tell you what it's like. You've got an assailant who is using an innocent civilian as protection. And that assailant is acting as a sniper and has already killed 4 or 5 people. And he has this innocent mother in front of him. You have a shot that you know will kill the assailant. It may also kill this innocent mother. He had to take the shot, and it literally destroyed him. What does just war understanding say about that?
It's like that analogy. Do you say the children that are floating down the river, or do you get the person who's dropping them in the river?
Well,
To that point, who was the one putting the civilians in danger? Not him. The guy, the sniper. So if that person if I was in that case, how would make it rest in my head? First of all, you wouldn't want me in the foxhole with you because I think too much. I'm always worried about the other guy. But if that civilian dies, you're not killing them because you're trying to just get the guy, the other combatant.
you've introduced a wonderful new factor. Go ahead.
And so what happens if that civilian happens to die? You didn't kill him. It was the person that you're taking out that killed him, that put that person in danger.
That is one just war understanding, that you are absolved of guilt because the other guy put the person in danger. A Christian understanding would say you still have to consider are there ways of dealing with this that will not kill the civilian. You may be absolved of guilt, but you're not absolved
Oh, yeah, you try, it's just get the
responsibility. Now, second, when you take your shot, what are you trying to do? You're trying to kill the sniper. You may kill this innocent person. So you are not trying to kill the innocent person. Second, you are saving, you already have had demonstrated that you are saving more lives than you are taking. Third, you are going to take the shot that kills the sniper, and you have determined you can't get behind the sniper. You can't get to the side of the sniper. And you will take the shot that with the sole intent of killing the sniper. Just War theory says that you have to do that, and that is a positive good. That's how hard it is, though. And you may disagree with that, and it's hard for me. But that's the kind of decision that you can't make by reasoning it out at the moment. That has to be a part of you. That ethic has to be a part of you in order for it to work.
What if, another level, if this were a business and somebody's acting so that if you get justice done or get the business operating the way it should be done, 10 people will lose their jobs. Day-to-day level.
And again, you go back. Are there other ways of accomplishing this that would not cause an innocent person, cost an innocent person his or her job? Might waiting and for an opportunity be better? Might going to the bad boss's boss be better? Or whatever. What are the alternatives? And again, what is your reasonable probability of success? If you don't go to war just to make a point, you may use nonviolent resistance to make a point and push on a bad decision. You may refuse to obey laws that are unjust as long as you're willing to take the cost of doing that.
I think of Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King.
Yes. Martin Luther King, I just said.
I couldn't hear it.
She said Martin Luther King, just as
That's
your
what you
face.
said.
Exactly. But Martin Luther King would not have taken an Uzi and killed all the Ku Klux Klan members.
When I think of this, I also think of it in the context of what has happened over the course of the past couple of years in the United Methodist Church, and particularly sort of the issues of creating a more inclusive church. I think we are headed toward a direction where the United Methodist Church, not the global United Methodist Church and other spinoffs, is likely to be a more inclusive church in the end. But the route that it's taken to get there, and the harm that I think it's done on the way to where people are likely not to come back to the church, who may have left the church for those reasons, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's taken the cause of a just war. I think there were sites that started out in that direction, but it's gone so many different ways that the harm, really irreparable harm in some regards, is done.
Thank you. Now, I'm sorry, but just a second. We're getting short on time, and I have a choice that the group needs to make. One, I can finish up in the didactic way in the next 10 minutes the section on just conduct after the war is ended. We talked a little about that. And we would not be able to spend a lot of any real time on how this applies to us. But we can figure that out. We can end today. And that's okay with me. Or we can take one more Sunday.
I think we should take one more Sunday.
One more
Okay,
Sunday.
we're gonna take one more Sunday. Now, so there's one that hasn't been mentioned. This one is tough. Good faith. Don't declare falsehoods or break promises to the enemy. This really applies to your personal life. You don't have to declare your purposes or the meaning of your actions, but you do not lie to the enemy, even to the enemy. And the reason is you make a just peace very difficult. Look at what's happening with Putin and Ukraine.
You might go into the war.
Peace might have been possible if Putin had not repeatedly lied to the Ukrainians, both civilians and government, as to what his intentions were. If you have proven that you are lying, the other side cannot trust the peace. And you're going to have a much more difficult time with that situation. So, good faith. And keeping in mind that restoring a just peace is the purpose of your war.
I think too many of us want to win the war rather than have a peace.
Yes.
I mean, we want it to be a clear-cut victory that we can.
And we are trained to want that in our personal lives. Now, I am a male. What are males taught still is the manly way to live.
To always be in charge. Don't back
Always be
down.
in charge, so we want to be in charge. What else?
Fight for what you believe.
Huh?
To fight for what
Fight for what you believe, and the word is fight. Keep going. What emotions are allowable?
Don't cry.
Don't cry, because crying is weakness.
2 years ago,
Many years ago, I heard a young mother say to her, that mother is no longer here, and so I'm not talking about anybody any of you know, but I heard a mother say to her little 4-year-old boy, little boys don't cry. It
Yes,
was right in that hall.
okay.
And the Speaker of the House was crying when it broke in.
Exactly.
If you have been taught that anger and lust and dominance are the permissible emotions for your kind, are you surprised when little boys fight as a first choice?
No.
Now for girls.
Depends on the household.
He sitting there and said, do what you're told.
If crying or showing or sharing your vulnerabilities are only okay for women,
But times are changing, Wiley.
I know they are.
And mothers, when I was growing up, and I think most of you in here, we're all in the same sort of 10-year generation, except for Shasta. But we were taught, let the men take care of you. And you serve the man. I mean, that's what I was taught. I watched my mother. My daddy was a wonderful man, but he came in from work and sat down in his chair and waited for Mama to call us to the table for dinner. Well, nowadays, when my boys were growing up, I said, listen, times have changed, and I want you to know how to cook and iron and take care of things to help your wife. Don't you come in and sit down and wait on her to call you to the table.
I'm gonna take a chance on something. I'm gonna do something I probably shouldn't do. You are doing exactly the right thing, teaching your males and your male and female children to be full human beings, not simply part of an image of some ideal cultural expectation. That is not happening in many areas, and I'll give you one name that I shouldn't give you, Madison Call.
Yes.
Yes.
Even though I am younger and I have that sense of independence that was given to me by my mother, it was not just because times have changed. I think a lot of it also has to do with your socioeconomic background. The first person in my family to be divorced was my great-grandmother. So it was in 1946, and so, we were taught not to rely on men. We were taught to take care of yourself. I know how to do basic maintenance on my car, and I was taught that by my grandmother. I was taught how to do basic carpentry work. And on the flip side of that, my dad, having two boys that were 14 and 13 years older than me, until I went through puberty, I was raised like a little boy. I wore boys' clothes, I played out in the dirt, rub some dirt in it, you'll be good, don't cry about it. My dad, even to this day, he'll say, that a boy, girl, whenever I do something. So I think a lot of it also has to do with your background, because, my mom's side was taught not to rely on men. And we're a female-dominant family. There's no boys in the family. You have to marry in to have men in the family. So.
Can I add one little idea with this civil rights movement as to get this idea across. There was a difference between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And throughout, and it's just the same thing now we apply to women's empowerment. You have this idea it's okay for men to be a complete person. Also, you have the other thing going on also in the women's empowerment, be like the men, just as neat, just as aggressive. And so I just want, we should be aware of it. And
we're not through by your decision, and we will be going more into the part that relates directly and daily to you next week, but we will first end up deal with the conduct after the war is over. Okay, thank you.
thank you, Wiley.
Thank you, Wiley. Yes. Thank you. I've ordered it this week, but it hasn't come yet, so thank you. There you First we didn't come, I found another one. He thought you'd come this time. Thank you so much. Next week. And I get that problem. Just doesn't show up. Oh, I didn't hear what you said. Third chapter or fourth chapter.